Welcome to another episode of Man Up, Man Down with an old friend of mine. If you say old, we've known each other for a long time. He's also a bit older than me. Not a lot, I don't think, although he did mention the podcast. We were a lot younger. We're not. So I've known Ken for 15 years, a good friend who has been pivoted from corporate career to, if I say, his own company, sold his own company, and is now, helping people, if I say, in midlife to get off the corporate train. So great discussion, lots of great pointers. I really enjoyed it. How about you, David?
Oh man, well, I'm a big fan of Ken. I mean, as well as the listeners will hear me say, he's been a big supporter of the podcast from day one. He came along to our London event, and and I have to say, sort of some of his comments have kind of like certainly invigorated me at times, where you think, oh, are we banging our heads against a brick wall? Um, but yeah, and he's got so much great advice on, not just on, starting up your own business, but corporate life and life in general. So yeah, another great episode, which
Yeah,
I'm sure the listeners will enjoy. Well, and the
exactly.
viewers if you're on YouTube.
Enjoy responsibly, as they say, right?
Welcome to the Man Up, Man Down podcast, presented by Volker Beluda and David Pawsey. We discuss the pressures and challenges faced by men approaching middle age that we're often too embarrassed to speak about with our friends. You can find us online at www.manupdown.com. Enjoy the show and don't forget to subscribe and leave us a review.
So another great episode in the making, I'd say. So we welcome Ken Valledy. So Ken, we've known each other for donkey's years, right? I think
Loads. So long.
DMDT, iMedia, Advisory Board, 2000
10 years ago, maybe 10, 11,
No, it must be longer.
longer.
I-
Yeah.
I'd say at least 15, but anyway,
Maybe
let's not.
15, maybe 15, and you're looking younger, Volker.
Oh, thank you. It's because I have less hair now.
There you go.
But let me do the formal intro, Ken. So I'm really pleased to have you on the podcast. So the formal intro goes as you're a seasoned entrepreneur, keynote speaker, and author of the Startup Lexicon, which we can see, for those watching it on YouTube, we can see it in the background. And I have contributed to it as well, so at least to version 2. So definitely a must-read guide. I can confirm that for navigating the language of startups. So after a successful career in senior marketing roles, including as brand director at AB InBev, Ken co-founded his own business, Progressive Acceleration, specializing in forging meaningful global partnerships between cutting-edge startups and major corporations such as Mercedes, P&G, Kimberly-Clark, and Haleon. Progressive Acceleration was acquired by the Anthesix Group. Is that pronounced correctly?
This is
Yeah.
group.
I always get the difficult ones, David,
Oh.
right? In October 2023, and passionate advocate for professionals seeking to break free from the corporate world and embracing entrepreneurship, regularly sharing your insights as a keynote speaker with talks about the great escape. So, Ken, welcome to the podcast, and tell us
Thank
more
you.
about, if I say, your journey. I mean, I know lots about you, but fill the listeners in, and then we talk about the great escape.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose my career to date has been in 3 chapters. The first chapter was your typical corporate career in marketing, branding, and as you say, I was at AB InBev and got to a reasonably senior level there. I then kind of went to the second chapter of my career, which was jumping the corporate train and starting my own business, initially on my own. In essence, connecting large corporations with with startups, sorry. And so I'd get briefs from the corporate world and I'd go and find startups for them to help them with said brief. I did that for a few years, formed a small agency with a good friend of mine, Matt, and we sold that a couple of years ago. And now I'm kind of into the third stage of my career. I don't know if this is the final one or there's a 4th or 5th coming, but the third stage is something I've always wanted to do, which is just help people, predominantly midlife people who are, in essence, in a really good corporate role, got everything they thought they wanted when they first graduated. It's all there. They've got the title, the package, the car, the shares, the bonuses, etc. but have kind of got to that point in life where they kind of feel, is this it? And they're not enjoying their corporate life as much as they used to. They're feeling very unfulfilled. And like I was 10 years ago in that boat, you're kind of surviving, you're managing up, and you're trying to avoid the chop. And the scary thing is that there's a load of people out there like that. I was like that myself. And my third stage or third chapter of my career now is trying to help these people one-on-one, help these people realize they have a choice. They don't have to sit on that corporate train until it slows down for retirement or redundancy. And that's the whole thing. And I use the analogy of a train that when you first graduate or you first start a corporate job, if you imagine the train stations of your age, you might start at station 18, you might start at station 21, and you look out the window every station and some people get off. But as you get older, as we all know, you don't look out the window anymore. You get used to sitting on the train. And then before you know it, you don't even worry about what's happening outside. You just get stuck on the inside. It's comfortable. You may not like the people you work with, but you know the shortcuts, you know where the coffee machine is, etc. And you stay on that train. And that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. Some people have corporate lives are great, but not for everyone. And I think a lot of people at a certain age just think, I'd love to do something else. I'd love to be my own boss, but that isn't the done thing. And how do I start? And am I moaning about something when really I should just be grateful for what I've got? So the great escape is you can make the first few steps to get off that corporate train. And that's what I do through workshops.
I love that analogy. I mean, there's a quote that follows me on Instagram, something like, if you're on the wrong train, the longer you stay on, the longer it will take to get back to, where you need to get on the right train, if you like, right? So, something
Absolutely.
like that. I mean, I'm paraphrasing because I never remember these quotes. I share them regularly, but I don't remember them. But it's that thing, right? We're on that train and the train just goes and goes and we're not in control, right?
Yeah, I think that's the thing. I think
Yeah.
someone was talking the other day about why you got on the train you did. And I remember you guys, one of your first episodes, you talked about careers and you were saying some people go into careers that wasn't even their choice. It may be what their parents or their peers thought they should go into. And I think, I was on the marketing train. I always wanted to get into marketing. I did a business degree and I was lucky enough to go into an area I wanted to go into. But I got to a point, and not everyone gets to this, but I got to a point where I wasn't really doing marketing. I was just playing politics really at AB InBev, and I was doing well at that, but I couldn't do that for another 10 years. But I feel really, in a way, there'll be people on that same train who never really wanted to get into the profession they're in, but they went into it because they were kind of advised by people to go down that path and they carried on. And so it must be very difficult for them to be on a train and never wanted to get onto in the first place. But whereas I was on the train I wanted to get onto, you get to a point where you think, I can't stay on here.
So what was the tipping point for you to get off the train?
Two things. It was a word and it was a article. And I do these talks called The Great Escape, and I mention it on those. But to cut a very long story short, I had my monthly appraisal as I did with my boss, and I was traveling 3 or 4 days a week for 4 years. I had teams in around Europe, and I had my appraisal with my boss in Belgium, and on the sheet of paper in front of him was all my metrics. I was doing well, but next to travel it said moderate. And I said to my boss Andreas, a German chap, I said, how am I down as a moderate traveler? I travel every week. And he said, well, to get to the next level, to become maybe a frequent traveler in the eyes of the company, I would have to take jobs and relocate the family, live somewhere different for 2 years, sort the problem out wherever it was there, and then get another tap on the shoulder and go to another country. And that's how you did it to get to the next level. And I realized then I didn't want to do that. There's no way my family would want to do that. And I realized for the first time that I'd have to leave AB InBev, because his last words to me were, as I left that meeting, and you're going to get that tap pretty soon. As in, someone's going to come up to you and say, by the way, you're going to Switzerland next year or Canada or something. So it was that. And then literally about a week later, I was coming back on the Eurostar from Brussels, and there was a magazine that Eurostar used to have. I think it was called The Metropolitan. And there was a double page spread about the startup world in Shoreditch. And I read that and it just resonated with me. I thought, well, here I am wondering what my future is. And these girls are building their own futures. And it just really, it just went down really well when I read it. So I went out to Shoreditch, met some startups. And luckily the first 2 or 3 startups I met were amazing characters. And I just thought, I want to work with these people. They were really energized. They were positive. They saw things in a completely different way to what I did as corporate Ken almost. And I just thought, I want more of that. I don't get energized at work. So I thought, what can I do to help them? And then this idea came up that they need to be introduced to large companies where I came from. And at the same time, from the large company side of things where I realized we knew nothing about startups. So I thought maybe I should just jump the train and be a connector. And my wife always joked that I could make money from drinking coffee and chatting to people, so I was going to put it to the test. So I served my notice at AB InBev and just started connecting people, got briefs, and went out and found startups. But it was the word moderate, and an article in a magazine that I only ever picked up once, and that one time only, that made me think, well, I could meet some startups. And if I hadn't picked the magazine up, or I hadn't asked Andreas that question in the interview, or I hadn't gone to Shoreditch and say I'd met some startups, but they were awful people, could have happened, bad founders, it might be different. So it's just where it happened. It happened in a space of about 2 months. But
Amazing.
before then, I was still wanting to do something else, but I was just resigned to the fact I shouldn't moan. Keep my eye on the corporate train as such.
Hi, Ken. I just want to say, well, thanks for coming on the podcast. But I mean, you sort of already mentioned the previous episode, and I just want to say that Ken's been like a fantastic supporter of the podcast from day one. So, like, thank you to him. He was the one that suggested the live event. So, yeah. Okay, Ken's got a lot to answer for, but
That's why he's here today.
I mean, you sort of mentioned, well, obviously the Great Escape, and it is the Great Escape, and obviously the film, it takes lots of different ways. Some people make it out, some people don't, but it's, it takes a lot of grit and determination. And I mean, you sort of mentioned there about, if you get to a certain level and you've got shares, you've got benefits, it's not just about, I've got to replace income, and then as you say, there's almost like a completely different side of it of, well, I know this, and humans are sort of scared of change. And, and often it is, sort of when people get made redundant, I guess, at this stage of career, that's traditionally where, they made the leap. And I guess sometimes that's because you have got a bit of startup cash to take the leap with. I mean, what is the first step? Whether you're kind of, choosing to jump yourself, are you getting off the train, or are you being pushed off the train because the train's been cancelled? What is the first step?
Ironically, the first step, I don't recommend. First of all, it's not for everyone, and I must say I'm not anti-corporate here. Some people like the train, and I'm not trying to say you should get off. So a lot of people like their careers, and that's absolutely amazing. But if you have got a kernel of an idea and you think there must be something else, then I wouldn't condone you do what I did, to be honest, of just resigning and starting something from scratch, because that is high risk. If you've got, as you mentioned before, you may have, if I've got a mortgage to pay and things like that, you may not be able to afford to take that risk. So what I condone is you can start with like a side hustle. Now, most people, let's say now you were in a corporate job and you've always wanted to, let's say, get involved in retail and something. I don't know, start a pop-up shop, or you want to do something online, but you don't know where to start. Well, what I would say is, well, let's work out what it is you want to do, and let's see if we can set that up as a little side hustle, maybe online, a little online selling business, whatever it is you want to do. So I'm saying to people that at the moment, that idea is something that most likely comes up every New Year's Eve after a couple of drinks with your friends. When people say, what are you going to do this year? I've got to get out of my job, and I've got to do that idea of retail or be a consultant or whatever it is. And it just sits as a voice in the back of your head, pops up usually after a couple of drinks on New Year's Eve, generally. What I'm saying is give that idea some oxygen. Let's not say jump, but you can actually start to build up a side hustle with any idea and keep the day job. So I help people work out, really get their idea right. What's the problem you're solving? How are you going to solve it? What's different with how you're doing it? I help people with things like how to register a company if they need an accountant, all the basic stuff, and how to do a 5-page pitch deck. It's the basic stuff that doesn't mean they can launch today, but it gives them all, at the end of working with myself, depending on what their circumstances are, they have all the levers they can pull at whatever speed they want and still keep their job. So some people will start a side hustle, keep it going for 2 or 3 years, and they'll be happy as Larry. They'll say, I still want to keep my job, but I've now got half a day a week or the weekend or whatever, I can focus on my side hustle. And that might be all the release or the relief they need to carry on that train. Some people might build it and think, you know what, I've just realized now I really enjoy this. And if I give myself a year or 18 months to do this, I might be able to exit the full-time job and move over into that. or maybe say to their boss, I want to do 3 days a week and put 2 days into that, but it gives them something else to focus on. So I'm not condoning jumping completely, although if people want to, I can help them de-risk that. I think you can have your cake and eat it to a certain extent. I think you can actually start something as a side hustle, and you can build it, and you can build it at a speed that's right for you, and keeps you still okay with your current employers. And that's where I'm getting the traction. So I'm not for one moment saying it's a wonderful world out there, just leave your job tomorrow and everything will be fine. But what I am doing is giving you a choice and giving you options and levers that you can pull, and it'd be quite exciting for you to see where that goes. And also, like you guys, having been out the corporate world for some time, what I can say is whether there's ups and downs or whatever, I enjoy it a lot more than I did the corporate world. So even just doing a side hustle, you'll most likely be surprised about how much fulfillment you get from that, because it's your little baby you're building. So to answer your question, David, it's more of a side hustle I'm playing on. I'm not condoning take the jump and you're going to be amazing.
Yeah. Don't, if you're listening, don't resign on the 2nd of January is what you're saying.
No, and don't be
don't go all in.
But the problem is that people, and it's because they're so busy. I mean, in one of my talks, I say that the average week I had at work in the corporate world, and this may resonate with some of your listeners, is you kind of work your backside off Monday to Friday, and you have these great ideas on the Monday what you're going to do. Not many people spring out of bed on the Monday, but even if you do, you think, I want to get this done, and you never really get it done, especially if you're reasonably senior. So you've got problems with the team to sort out, things happen, budget problems, emergencies, whatever. So you never end up getting done what you want to get done generally, and you just firefight, and you're really busy, and you're running around. And at the end of the week, it's like, thank God for that. I always found for me, Saturdays were the day I reset and convinced myself I shouldn't complain, things are fine. But like a Cinderella kind of thing, once midnight happened on a Saturday night and you drifted into Sunday, about 10 o'clock on a Sunday morning, I'd be 10, 20% thinking about the week ahead. I'm still there at the time when I was working with kids as they were, young children at the time, but I was drifting over to the week ahead in my mind. And by the time it got to 8 o'clock in the evening, I was laptop out, 90% thinking about the week ahead and 10% thinking about the here and now. And then again, you'll wake up on a Monday and you're losing a bit of energy, but you never get things done. It goes round and round. And unfortunately, that can go on for months, years. You don't realize it. And I think that's if people just get a little bit of oxygen and think, actually, I have got the week ahead to think about, and I've got a lot on, but I've also got this little side thing I'm doing. It might just give you a little bit of relief, and it might actually build into something bigger and quicker than you think. But if you don't do anything and you just go around in the circle all the time, you'll have the same problems forever, and you have the same conversation on New Year's Eve, dare I say.
So I'll just ask one more question, and then I'll let you get back in, Volker.
I'm just if I can just jump in for a second here, because I've seen a few of these conversations on LinkedIn recently of people saying, or kind of like, work for yourself, you get your weekends back, you're in control of your time. I don't think I've ever worked as much as I do now. So it's sometimes an illusion to think, you got your weekends back when you work for yourself. So I just want to clear that up briefly. Sorry, David.
Yeah, I'm not too bad though. I would say for me personally, and everyone's different. I generally don't work much weekends. I mean, I will work I work generally, to be honest, on I'd say late Sunday afternoon. I usually sit down. I mean, I'm still thinking about work. I still look at our phone, but I don't disappear off somewhere to work. So I might on a Sunday think, well, I better get ready. But the difference is when I was in the corporate world, I'd be working on my laptop earlier. I'd be dreading what's coming up that week, and there'd be big calls to do, and that would stress you out. When you work for yourself, yeah, you always have a bad meeting coming up, but there's a lot more interesting things come up as well. So I've never ever had a week in the 11 years I've worked for myself where the whole week I dread it. There's always an event or an interesting meeting, a biz dev opportunity. There's always something to think that could be great. And I think the yardstick for me personally, was when I worked corporate side, Sunday was the start of the week really. But now Sunday for me is a part of the weekend. That's my own kind of acid test. But everyone's different. It depends what you want to do with your business. But I just think you can control it. I think when you work for someone else, yes, you can control it, but you are in a way, you technically being controlled by someone else. Because if you've got a boss who sends you emails over the weekend and all these things are flying about, you have to follow your reply, and all of a sudden you're working 7 days a week for flat.
It's just I just don't want people to get the illusion that once you go self-employed, you get your weekends
I
back,
think-
because
Oh, you work. I mean, I'll be very candid. I work long hours now,
yeah, exactly, yeah.
but my stress levels compared to when I worked at the corporate world is about 20%, 30% of the corporate world.
Because you enjoy what you're doing. I think
Yeah.
that's a huge difference, right? It's
That's
not
it,
the
yeah.
amount of work, it's how you see work, because it's more a hobby
Yes.
almost.
Yeah, and you do it because you can see the benefit of what you're doing. You can see the benefit in the next stage of it, because you're, in a way, you've got a clearer vision of what you're doing and why you're doing it. When
Yeah.
you work for someone else, it can be you're filling in forms for the sake of it because you have to, and you're attending meetings for the sake of it, and it's like your time's being grabbed from you. Whereas I think when you work for yourself, yes, you still have clients and everything, but I think you're more in control of your diary. I have more access. I have more autonomy now over what I do during the week. I still work long hours, but I have more autonomy over taking breaks and doing things. So I never would have had that, I don't think, before.
Sorry, David,
Well,
you had a question?
No. I mean, it is a very interesting point, and and I'd also sort of counter that there's part of business that I'm like, if I realise that this was part of it, I might have stuck to the full-time job corporate world. Yeah, I mean, it's I don't know. It's like, do I switch off more now than when I had a full-time job?
You still always have good and bad weeks. One thing doesn't change. You have good and bad weeks.
Yeah,
And
I
bad
mean,
meetings. What
and
changes
and
there?
Hello folks, it's Volker here. I hope you enjoy this week's episode. As you know, I coach executives, whether that is for leadership skills, or sales leadership skills, or working as a therapist too. There are few ways I can help you to get unstuck, improve your work-life balance, or become a better version of yourself. So you will be more productive and have more time for your family. Whatever it is, you can join my client list of people from General Electric, Pepsi, DHL, Boots, and many others. Book a free exploratory call via my website www.obnat.us. That's OBNAT.us. Now back to the show.
I think someone said to me the other week, and it's so true, is one of the benefits of working for someone is you're guaranteed a pay packet at the end of each month. And that is amazing. And when we were acquired by Enthesis, fantastic company, it was weird, but it was really good to get a pay packet on a certain day each month. And that is something that, you miss because it's a certainty. I mean, as much as you can keep your job, people get made redundant and everything, but generally speaking, it's a certainty which you can guarantee. Absolutely bang on. The flip side to that, which someone else brought up, not me, was when you work for someone else, you can work loads and loads of hours, and you can think about work for hours and hours. You could commit everything to that job, be it working and thinking about it, and you still get the same pay packet.
I
See
mean, that was something that I was gonna say is like, there's times when I've got friends that are like, "Oh, we had this happen. I'm really struggling this month," and I'm like, "Well, yeah, if I'm in that situation, I can like generate more work, and it's like, yeah, it's
Yeah.
you do have like more control over your destiny."
You do. I think you just move around a lot more, and Volker,
Yeah.
we know you don't. You keep, you try something and you move and you pivot, and we've all done it, and you have to because you don't have that guaranteed pay, and I think that is a risk, but it's also quite not underplaying it, but it can be quite motivating as well in a funny way when you do find a route.
But
if
and
you-
something that me and Volker have discussed before is
Yeah.
that it doesn't. Yeah. As soon as the shareholders aren't happy, or like as soon as the senior leadership team's like, right, we've got to cut some costs. That pay packet can disappear in an instant.
The problem with the pay packages is like heroin, right? It's like you get it every month, right? And then you get, I don't know, wellness days, and you get this and that, right? So you get sucked in. So you have to have it, or you think you have to have it. But I challenge your security because, as you know, I moved around quite a lot, right? A lot of redundancies, very fragile industry. And I always found a job, within 2 or 3 months, kind of like you lose one, you get the next one. But every time I lost a job, I lost 100% of my income, right? It was like gone. There was zero coming in. Now I'm working across, I don't know, 6, 7 clients, right? If one goes, shit happens, right? I still have 6 others that pay my bills. As long as I have enough that pay my bills, I survive. So actually, I think I'm feeling a lot more secure these days. but I'm also constantly hustling for new business. It's a huge trade-off, right? So if you don't enjoy hustling people for business, don't get self-employed, right? And I think that's where most people struggle.
That's
think-
where I struggle.
The interesting thing is, if the people that I talk to are not necessarily clients, and I've realized this. I mean, I started doing this 5-6 months ago, but the thing I'm realizing is that people who are, when I was in the corporate world, I thought I was quite a good networker. But really, when you're in the corporate world, you network with people like yourself. So you go to, in my case, a branding event, a marketing event, an ad tech event, whatever, and you meet other people like yourself and you chat about the same old thing. And you go to work dues and everything. But it's not really networking as you would describe it, Volker, of like going out, trying to meet people, build business, grow connections, this kind of stuff. And then when people leave the corporate world, one of the, and I'm being general here, one of the challenges is actually trying to relearn or learn from scratch the art of networking, because that's crucial if you want to be your own boss. It's absolutely crucial. If you just sit there behind, maybe I'm old school, but if you sit behind a laptop all day and try and connect via LinkedIn, and LinkedIn's great, but if you just try and do everything via screen, you can build up a kind of a superficial network, but you got to really kind of also be seen and get out and people know who you are. And that's quite tough. I think if you've been used to going to the same, not so much nowadays, but hybrid, we're in the same office and same people, same kind of events, when you've got to then go out and sell yourself, and and it's quite important to do that and build a network slowly. That's a soft skill I think a lot of corporate I don't think teaches you. It teaches you politics. You learn how to interact with people and get on with people and read rooms. That's a really invaluable skill. But the networking one, I think, is a bit of a blind spot that I definitely find a lot of corporate people aren't ready for. And I think you can pick it up. It's not like it's, you can solve it, but it's interesting how people see that. And this is kind of, you've got to, as you say, Volker, you've got to have 3 or 4 options open. You've got to balance out your risks. It's a whole different mindset change. And
Well,
it's
but
not easy.
even that, you've sort of touched on a couple of things. It's like, well, actually, you've got to kind of mix up your physical networking with your LinkedIn networking, and I think also it's kind of like you've got to try lots of different, in terms of business generation, you've got to sort of try and find out what works best for you, and and for some people it is LinkedIn, but then at the same time it's like, well, is likes turning into revenue? But that's a very different conversation. But so the question that I was going to ask, I mean, you sort of said about you help people sort of define the proposition of, what is it they offer, and what is the problem that they want to solve. I mean, so, sort of what point, I mean, you've sort of said that you're not kind of dragging people out of the corporate world. I mean, is it generally people are like, well, I've got this idea, or is it kind of like, I'd like to try something new, or I mean, sort of, and sort of e-commerce kind of, that became, and drop shipping. There was, you kind of get, you hear a lot about side hustles, and I guess there's almost a sort of slight distinction between something that you get into because it's a hobby. And then it's almost like, oh, you might spot a business opportunity in that, but there might also be actually, I just want to try something completely different, like e-commerce. I mean, what, I guess, how fully formed are people coming to you with like ideas about their business?
My kind of criteria generally is you have to have a kernel of an idea. So I've got one client who definitely wants to leave the corporate world but doesn't have a set idea, and we're trying to work out what their passions are and interests are and everything. And that's harder work because they want to leave, but they haven't got any kind of route or vision of where they want to go. Generally speaking, it's someone who's got a kernel of idea. And to be simplistic, there's 2 options I think you have when you think about leaving the corporate world. One is to, and both are difficult. They're not like an easy route, by the way. One is to kind of keep close to what you did. So if you were a marketing person, you come out and you're a marketing branding consultant, and you think, right, that's what I want to do. I want to make my own money doing what I'm good at. And that is a common route people take. There's challenges to that. You can't just come out and say, I've got 20 years marketing experience and expect people to pay you, because there's a load of competition out there. But that's one option. The other option, which is reference what you're saying, you might just say, I've had enough of marketing. I want to go, and I've always had an interest in fashion or retail or building an app or doing something to do with charities or whatever it may be. But I just have not got the time or the headspace to work out how I can do it, where I can do it, and what my commercial model can be. And what I can do to people, either of those routes, is say, right, let's go down one of those paths you want to go down, and let's try and flesh it out. And I think the big learning is, you've got to really niche down what you want to do and be very clear about the problem you're solving and how you're going to solve it differently. And once you kind of nail that, you get an idea of your commercial model, then we can start fleshing out, right, you've got that. Let's get a little 5-page deck together. And now how are we going to start connecting you up? And the USP that I offer to people is, to a certain extent, we can all fill templates out. And there's not a lot of templates on my workshops. I don't necessarily believe in them for this. But what I can do is, because I've very much like Volker, been around for a few years now, and I know a lot of people, and my network's pretty good. I can introduce them to people to help them in their area. I can get them into certain events where they will meet more people. So as well as giving them the kind of a roadmap to follow and help them build a deck and get some meat on the bones, I can also fast track the kind of networking for them and say, right, well, let me introduce you to 2 or 3 people who might be able to help you. Let me come to this event. I'll get you in and you can meet some other people. That kind of thing, if you try and do it on your own, is very difficult and can be very soul destroying, but I can fast track that. So my USP really is, if I can help, if you work with myself and we go through a workshop, I can actually plug you into my network. And that, I think, is kind of worthwhile, because then you're getting some momentum and you're meeting people. And I think that's really important as well. Be it on Zoom or whatever, but you're meeting people who never knew existed before. I don't just leave people with a template and here's your problem, here's how you're going to solve it. Good luck. Thank you very much. It's more a case of, right, well, I know 3 or 4 people I'll introduce you to. You should definitely go to this event. You should definitely join this podcast. You should, all that stuff to give them that kind of extra push. And then it makes it more tangible rather than something filed in your cloud, like a template. Does that make sense? So, I'm trying to bring it to life more.
I think it makes a lot of sense. And what we often forget, right? Or obviously you don't, because you just talked about it, right? But we have a network, right? And we build it over the years. People that come into the work life now or since 2020, right? They're working hybrid, or they're working remotely completely, right? How do you build a network remotely, right? It's so difficult. You're not in the pub, you're not bumping into someone, you're not going to conferences, you're in your own little world. So you maybe try it on LinkedIn, or you join clubs and online communities, but it's never the same. And if I say, it kind of leads on to a question I have in terms of, if I say, I got self-employed in 2019. That's when I got off the train, right? Just in time for COVID, right? I didn't anticipate COVID. I wasn't like, oh yeah, next year. But what, do you think there's an acceleration, if I say, from people that want to get off the train because of COVID? Because we realize there's more in life than just working for someone else?
I've definitely read reports that would back that up, that say, I think COVID, and this is from what I've read or heard on podcasts, COVID made people reflect and think more because everything just changed overnight. And I think I'm sure a lot of people left the cities and went out to live in Devon and Cornwall and out in the countryside because they wanted to just readjust their whole work-life balance. And now you find that a lot of people now don't want to go back in 5 days a week or 4 days a week, whatever they did before. So I think it made people reassess their life and how work fitted into their life. And I think also it made people reassess just general stuff about the relationship they wanted with their job. Do they want to be in all the time? Do they not want to be in? I feel really, really sorry for people who were younger, who their first job was during COVID, because you're starting a job and you don't even meet physically anyone you're working with, and it's all done via, that must be very, very difficult. But I think COVID changed things. I think the technology was always there. And I think, my view, if COVID had never happened, I think we still might have ended up in a place in a few years' time where it's still hybrid, because technology enables you to do it. COVID just sped it up. So everyone was on Zoom. Yeah. So I don't think COVID created a world that was never going to exist. I think it was always going to get like that, with technology speeding up and everything. But I think it just brought it all forward. I think it's tough. I think another thing I've noticed is that a lot of younger people now, I'm talking midlife, but I think there's a lot of younger people now who have gone on the corporate train. And because, rightly or wrongly, they expect more faster, I think they're more asking, is this it earlier, maybe before midlife? So I think everything's speeded up. People's expectations, people's shorter time spans to hit their goals and to achieve things. So I think there's a lot more pressure now. But the market I'm playing in, and we're talking about midlife, I think is where people have these big questions, but they just don't have the headspace to do anything about it.
I mean, you've touched on an interesting point there that, well, and which, I sort of thought about when you were, sort of talking about templates and putting together pitch decks and things.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, actually, it's almost like, and I think Stephen Bartlett, can take a lot of credit for it, but there's more of an entrepreneurial sort of spirit amongst, younger generations. Well, I certainly feel that than there was when I was in my 20s. So it's almost like, there's a lot of advice for young sort of business startups and whereas, it's almost like you're, obviously coming at it from the other end of sort of the age spectrum. But it's almost like, well, you have got two ends of the spectrum, whereas sort of the younger generation are perhaps going to grasp app development and that sort of thing sort of quicker, but you've got, I guess the more, the longer term vision or
Yeah.
I mean,
I think younger people have or feel or do have more choice. So but if you're 25 now, 28, 29, and you're not happy in your career, you can still switch, do something different, and it's not deemed as, and I think a lot of them have got the courage to do that. So if they go into finance, they don't like it, they switch, they learn, they go online, they can learn things. I'm being very simplistic, but you can switch, learn a new trade, and you're off again. I think as you get older, and especially you've been in and especially maybe I'm older than you guys, but our kind of generations, you learn a profession and you go up it, and then you're in it. That's what you're in. I chose marketing, other people choose insurance, other people choose whatever it is, and you're in it. That's the one. You just got to get on and survive. I think it's harder to switch because have you got the motivation to do that and to relearn and to start again at the bottom somewhere. So I don't think you feel you have the choice, and maybe your situation stops you thinking you got the choice to retrain. So you just stay where you are. And I think what I'm saying to people is there's nothing wrong with that, but you do have a choice. You don't have to necessarily retrain and start again in the corporate world, but with a different profession. You don't go from marketing to finance. It take years to become an accountant. But there is a quicker way if you want to be your own boss. You need to start building something tomorrow, if you really wanted to, or start researching it. I had this model called REACT, R-E-A-C-T, and one of those things is about analyzing the market. So if you want to get into, let's say you want to get into online retail and somehow, or fashion, start researching what's out there, who's doing it, what business they got. Give yourself an hour a week on a Wednesday, and that's all you do at the start. Just have a little pet project. You don't have to register a company, get it VAT registered, get invoices ready, get an accountant straight away. Just play. And I've got a lot of my clients who come back and say, wow, doing an hour a week, just researching what I might want to get into, still doing my day job, has been amazing. It's just made it real. And so I don't think we have to, even though we're older, I don't think we have to go 100 miles an hour. I'm not catching up with anything. I think you actually can take your time over it. And 3 or 4 months of slowly building something, not making any money maybe, but slowly building something and putting time to it and doing your day job could be really refreshing, and it'd be time well spent. But people don't know how to, in a nice way, haven't got the time to know how to start 0 to 1, all this kind of thing. So I just help them say, well, let's flesh your idea out. Let's try and get you in front of some people. Let's try and, whatever it may be you need to give you those tools to play with at a speed that's right for you. So researching it is one thing. And I say, another one I recommend to people is you don't have to do it on your own. Is there someone you know, a friend or family, or who you could do it with? And why don't you go and have a chat with them? But the first thing I say to everyone is, if it's still a voice in your head, go and talk to someone. Go and talk to a friend and say, I've got this idea about starting my business, and talk to them over, not 1 second, like, this is why I want to do it. And, that for me, when I did that 10 years ago, I found an amazing step forward because I could hear myself saying, I've got an idea to start my business. And I found that was a game changer. So stop it just being a voice in your head that comes out at a certain time of the year. I would actually talk to people and they might say, oh, that's interesting. And you think, oh, maybe it is. And all of a sudden you've got a little bit of momentum, do a little bit of research. All of a sudden this idea that kept cropping up every now and then is now becoming real, and you're starting to look out for things. And I've always said, if you start looking out for things, you'll see things, you'll see opportunities, you'll see other things that, if you want to buy a red car, you'll see red cars everywhere. If you want to start a business in X, all of a sudden you will see opportunities in that area that you never saw before. So you just got to open your eyes a bit more in a nice way. But you just got to give yourself time. So I'm saying small steps, but those small steps make a big difference. Yeah.
So I'm always looking a little bit at the time. So
Yeah.
before we run out of time,
Yes.
I need to ask you about the startup lexicon. What's your most favorite word in it?
Well, it's a book that Volker has contributed to. The Startup Lexicon, and for people who don't know, was a book that
Yeah.
Amy and I wrote. It's on the second edition, and it's all the words that startups and accelerators and investors use. But the favorite word is, and it's one of Eamon's words that I never knew existed. So Eamon and I would go away and pull these words together and join every week with what we got. And Eamon discovered a word called enshittification. I don't know if you've heard of that.
I haven't.
No.
No, I'd never heard of it, and it's the nearest we've got to a swear word in the book. And enshittification, in essence, and by the book, if you want to get the full definition, but the way I see it is, as an experience goes on with a piece of tech, say, the service gets worse, and that's called enshittification. So if you think now of something like Netflix or YouTube or things like that. When you first got it, it was amazing. God, this is incredible. The content's great. And over time, the content maybe dips a bit. All of a sudden, you've now got adverts coming in, and you could argue the experience is declining. So initially, it's amazing, but over time, bits come into it, and the overall service experience declines. And the term for that a lot of people use is enshittification. So, and I can see that now. Just like I said about the red cars. Now I know that word. I see it in everything I do. I think, God, that's not as good as what it was 3 years ago. They're really playing silly buggers doing that now. With
So just to clarify, so is that more the service has got worse rather than the psychological impact of, when something's, it's like, I'm just trying, like sort of, well, the internet, wow, we can get on the internet. Then it's like, oh my God, getting on the internet's so slow. Dial-up internet's rubbish, and it's,
I think the
so,
internet, I mean, big one, I don't know. I mean, I'd say the internet is not so bad. I just think it's when you get,
I guess, sorry, I'm just trying, like, is
Yeah.
it increasing expectations, or is it the fact that that service has got worse?
I think it's more that in the case of Netflix, obviously they need more revenue. So they're starting now to play ads through the films. And I would argue you got to get more content on it. Only my view, sometimes the content's not that great. Whereas before, when it first came out, it was like, wow, this is incredible. You've got all this stuff. You can stream it. It's a certain amount each month. This is fantastic. But obviously, they've got to feed the need for content. And you could argue maybe the level of content's gone down. And then all of a sudden now you're watching a film and up comes an advert. So it's almost like they've got to get their money back or whatever, or make more money or whatever it may be. I don't know their motives. But the actual experience you're getting, still watching stuff on streaming, the concept's the same, but you're not enjoying it so much because there's extra bits that are going on that are diluting it a bit for you. And that's what enshittification is all about.
Right. I'm glad that you use Netflix because one of my best friends works for them. So
There you go. And I like Netflix, but it's like anything. It's like YouTube now. It's always flashing up adverts and
Yeah.
So that's one word, and there's many other words on there. But it's just we're going to hopefully be writing a third edition at the end of the year because we've already got. It's 30 words that weren't in second edition. Now they've come. The language of startups is like a whole new thing, just evolving in the back.
Does it ever slow down? I mean, will you have a first, fifth? I always wonder, right, with books, why don't we just digitalize them all, right? And then
we do have a Kindle version, and our publisher did get in touch the other day and say, "Would you do an audio version?" And I thought,
you
I
should.
thought an audio version might be quite, even though it's my book, I think you'd fall asleep if you listen to someone say accelerator definition and A/B testing definition.
Yeah.
I think they're thinking you could actually just verbalize what does that mean, and it comes up and tells you back what the language, what the actual definition is. So maybe it's an interactive way. So I think that's what
I
it
like
means.
that.
So yeah, you're right. I mean, we've got a Kindle version. You can get a digital version, but I suppose at the moment most of our sales are still going through on the physical version.
Right.
But that will obviously, I'm sure that will move over to more digital.
It's just when we update books, it's always so difficult. I mean, I remember, and I'm sure both of you will remember, right? When we had a lexicon at home, right? Like a proper lexicon, A to Z, right? And every year we bought a new version, or every 2 or 3 years we bought a new version. It went from 20 books to 24 books to 26 books, right?
Well, I think like the encyclopedia, I think the problem was that
Yeah.
encyclopedia covered everything
Exactly.
and
Yeah,
it
yeah.
just couldn't keep up. Whereas what we try to do is be very niche and just
Yeah.
cover the language that startups and investors use. So it doesn't grow by the hundreds and hundreds and hundreds every 6 months, but it's still, you know, I would argue whether it ends up being digital, but I will go every week. I'll be in a meeting and someone will say something. I think, oh, I don't know what that means. I write it down and say, well, when we do the new version, we have to include that. Especially with AI at the moment, there's loads of new terminology. I mean,
I was going to say, you know, it's like the startup lexicon, then it's going to be the AI lexicon, or you know, you could end up with lots of little subdivisions.
I don't want to end up being a lexicon. Author.
Lexicon of lexicons.
The lexicon of lexicons, but again, though, it's just, and I think this is going back to what we were saying earlier about running your own business. That would never have come up in a corporate world. If you were, I would argue, if you're now, I know you can go online somewhere and see glossary of terms on the back of websites, but if you were in a corporate business now where you were, there was language flying around everywhere, no one would say we should write a book to help people. We haven't got time for that. But with Eamon, I had this idea to write this book, and we just did it. And you know, I've done my own podcast in the past, and nowadays, if you've got the time and you work for yourself, you can just do it. And I think that's the advantage as well. But when you work for a large corporation, you say, let's do a podcast, and you must have to go through about 10 meetings to get it all signed off. And by the time you get it signed off, the budget might have gone. And I think that's part of the joy of the lexicon came about because it was an idea. I managed to convince a publisher, and we're off. We're doing it. So you can, you know, go back to what I was saying, you can do, I never thought I'd write a book when I jumped off the corporate train, but anything's possible. If I can write a book, anyone can write a book. Seriously. Everyone's got a book in them, as they say. But yeah, so I would, the lexicon's been good fun. It's not, you never make money writing books unless someone makes a film out of it. And I can't see the startup lexicon being a blockbuster. But it's really good to do. It keeps you busy, and in the case of our ones, it's always going to be renewed if we've got the motivation to do it, which at the moment we have.
Wait for the Men Up, Men Down book. That's going to be a blockbuster.
Well, there you go. That could be it. You could do stories of all the people we've interviewed.
Yeah. Hold that thought, Ken. Hold that thought.
Yeah.
Anyway, unfortunately, we are going to have to wrap it up. So if people want to get in touch with you because they have got an idea for a startup, how do they find you, Ken?
Yeah, well, if anyone, by all means, just reach out on LinkedIn. Just connect up with me in LinkedIn and just drop me a note and say, have you got 20 minutes to have a chat, half an hour to have a chat about an idea? I do those regularly. I'm more than happy to give you my view and maybe help you make those first few steps and keeping to the train analogy, help you to get out of that seat and start to move towards that door, but at a pace that's right for you. So yeah, just reach out on LinkedIn, and that'd be the best way.
Brilliant. Well, thanks very much, Ken.
Yeah, thank you, Ken. It was a pleasure to have you on the podcast.
No, thank you. My pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode. Feel free to reach out to Volker or David via our website, www.manupdown.com or podcast@manupdown.com, with any feedback or to let us know what topics you'd like us to cover in the future. Hear you again soon.